Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to take a look at the 19th game in my series of Spiel des Jahres, or German Game of the Year winners. And this is Wacky Wacky West, designed by Klaus Teuber, who's most famous for designing the Settlers of Catan. And this is essentially a game in which 2 to 4 players are going to be collectively building onto a map, which depicts a town of the Wild Wild West here. And essentially trying to protect their buildings, which they will get a card, which they will keep secret, from being built over. Players are going to be collectively extending routes over the course of the game, and if ever a player wants to build over an outhouse, that's going to force a vote between all of the players. If that vote passes, the player will be able to place a tile. If it doesn't, that player will have to take the tile back. So players are going to have some control over when other players build, but not total control. And essentially, this is a game of bluffing and of strategy and trying to make sure that no route comes near your buildings. So let's take a moment to look at the rules, and then I'll come back and I will let you know what I think about the game. So here we see the board set up for Wacky Wacky West, and you'll see that there are these 4 pawns in each of the corners, and these are basically spaces through which the various routes are going to extend. So there's water space down here, 2 railroads, and then a road. And essentially the theme of the game is that players are going to be landowners who are just trying to deal with a land grab situation in a town that's been oversold. Essentially, these plots have been sold to multiple people in the town, and each player will have a vested interest in one of these types of buildings. So, for example, the jail or the bank or the saloon. And will secretly be trying to make sure that as the town expands, it does not overbuild their buildings. To get that secret type of building, each player will be given a hidden goal card, which they'll keep secret. So this player is, for example, trying to keep their school safe, whereas this player wants to keep the stable safe. And players will also receive a set of voting cards, which I'll explain in a minute. There's 8 of those, and there's yes votes, no votes, and those come in 1, 2, and 3 quantities. And then there are 2 yellow votes, and I'll explain those in a moment. And then they will also get a number of tiles. So there's a number of these building tiles, which could be railroads, waterways, or normal roads, and they will get shuffled up and divided evenly among the players. So some players will have more ability to influence the water, some players will have more ability to influence the railroad. And the way that the game plays is that starting with the starting player, each player will get to just choose a tile and build it. So the way that works is that you just have to look where this pawn is and then extend out the route from that pawn. At the start of the game, it starts in the corner, so it could go either which way. So this player here has a school here, and generally the more valuable buildings are going to be toward the center of the board. But that's not always the case. Here they have a level 4 school, and this is how many points those will be worth at the end of the game if they don't get demolished over the course of the game. So what the player might do is choose to just build up one of these railroads here to make the railroad go this way instead of that way. By doing that, they're just building on a blank space, and if you're building on a blank space or any of these player buildings or potential player buildings, there's always going to be some buildings that aren't controlled by any player. That's just an automatic build. That's fine. So that would just be that player's turn. Now it would go to the next player who has the stable secretly, and they're not worried at all here, because there's no stable within reach. But they might want to try to take out this player's saloon. So they might propose that they build, for example, this here. And each of these spaces is going to have a start space and an end space. So after you've built, you'll place the pawn on the end space, and the next building has to go from there. So here, they would be proposing this. And you'll notice that it's overtaking a saloon, a blank space, and then an outhouse. The saloon and the blank space are no problems. Players could build over those freely, but the outhouse is an issue. In this game, there's essentially a town ordinance that says that in order to build over an outhouse, players need to command the vote of the majority of the citizens in the town. So whenever somebody proposes building over an outhouse, that will instigate a voting round. And this is where those voting cards come into play. So like I said, each player is going to get 8 cards. There's going to be 3 voting cards for yes, and those are 1, 2, and 3. So those counts as 1, 2, and 3 votes. There's 3 voting cards for no, and those are 1, 2, and 3, and those count as no. And then there are these 2 special cards. So this one here is essentially abstain. The thing about this card is that if you play this, it will come back to your hand. Any other voting card that you use will be taken out of the game. So these are one-time use only. This is the only one you can use multiple times. And then this one here, counts as either 2 yeses or 2 nos, but the player who plays it gets to decide after the fact. So this player might have played that. It's initiated a vote. They obviously wanted to go through. Maybe they will, but they aren't especially concerned about it. Maybe they're just trying to get information about other players. It might be wise for them to abstain. This player here has one of their saloons getting crushed, so they definitely don't want that to happen. So they might play, for example, their 2 no votes. This player here with the jail, that is perilously close to their 4 value jail, so they might vote 1 no on that. And this first player is in a similar situation where they don't want the railroad to come up near their schoolhouse, so they might vote no as well. Once every player selected 1 card, you'll reveal them. And here we have a no, abstain, no, and no. So it'll be 4 votes no to 1 abstention. So these cards will all go out of the game, reducing these players' voting power in the future, whereas this player will get this card back. Since this was voted down, it would just get returned to the player. They'd be able to play it in the future, possibly. So this is how the rounds are going to go, with just players taking turns building. So now that this player's successfully protected their saloon, they might want to have the train get out of Dodge, so they might just do that to just move that train along. And then, this player doesn't care about, the church or the bank, so they might build over that, or they might just start building out another route. So this is how the game rounds are going to go. Essentially, the game goes until one of a few things happens. Basically, until everybody's played all of their tiles, or until somebody cannot play a tile. There is one other feature on some of these tiles. So you notice that here, let's say this player built this. If later on during the game somebody extended out this river here to here to here to here, they would be able to. So now the pond would be here, because this train track has a tunnel on it. The river could extend under there, so the next player would be able to perform the next build here. So they could even have it go upward like that as the next turn. Just it mixes up the ability to lay tiles like that. So at the end of the game, essentially, after everybody's built all of their tiles that they're able to build, or until every player's run out of tiles, and once you've run out of tiles, you are still able to participate in votes. You essentially will look to see who has the most buildings available, or building points on the board left, which will happen when everybody reveals their card. And whoever has the most points left on the board will win. In the case of a tie, the tiebreaker will be the yes and no votes that you have in your hand. So not counting this one, just the number of these cards that you have remaining. Okay, so that is Wacky Wacky West, and I must say that I've only ever played the rethemed American version of this. I've never played the original German version, and this is a really odd little game. It's certainly very interactive. It's one that is definitely enhanced by players, hooping it up and cheering and trying to, do soft negotiations to, make people build one way versus the other. And a lot of that talk that, ideally there's going to be some bluffing and some, frankly lying about what your interests are. And if played in the right spirit, this is a terrific game that plays in about 30 minutes or so, and it's pretty memorable. It's a game that you won't want to play over and over and over again, most likely, but it's one that is worth pulling off the shelf every once in a while, because it has this really unique feel to it, because of the way that you're collectively building routes, but trying to avoid having people build over your buildings. And because of the hidden roll mechanism, which is actually featured in a lot of the Spiel des Jahres winners, the game flows very well, and it keeps people from overanalyzing. it's not a matter of just counting up all the points on the board and then targeting the player who's in the lead because you don't know who that player is. It just keeps the game light, which is, I think, appropriate for a winner of this award. Ultimately, it's one that I think has not, for some reason, become more popular, at least not in the U.S. Perhaps in Germany it was more popular. I think the Wacky Wacky West version is actually the first version ever released here in the USA. And I just don't, I remember, playing it, several times when it first came out, and I haven't played it much, and I haven't seen it much ever since then. And, doing this video just reminds me that this is actually quite a fun little game that plays very quickly and gives players something that they can't get many other places. The one critique I would have of it really is that I wish it went to more players. I mean, because of the number of tiles, they divide evenly among 4 players, whether you have 2, 3, or 4. I really would not particularly want to play this with 2 players. With 3 players, it's okay, but with 4, it's terrific. And I imagine that if somehow this could be, accommodating more players, it would be even better because there'd be more, chance that a vote would swing. There'd be more interest on the board and so on. So I wish there was even a 5th player to this, since there are 6 types of buildings on the board. But alas, there is not. It is simply a 4-player game, and it's a decent 4-player game, and one that I think sits in its particular niche even, wow, it's almost 20 years later. So, or it's over 20 years later. What am I saying? It's 25 years later. So 25, here's to 25 years with Wacky Wacky West. And those are my thoughts on it. Thanks for watching.